Jim, yeah, we were talking right before we hit record about this topic of anxiety, and I think that it's interesting that we both seem to have it on our minds. And I think what I'll do is just let me start by reading a brief definition of what anxiety is. So, anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness. It might cause you to sweat, feel restless and tense, and have a rapid heartbeat. It can be a normal reaction to stress. For example, you might feel anxious when faced with a difficult problem at work before taking a test or before making an important decision. And I mean, there's all kinds of additional clinical stuff that is part of that definition. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think the nice thing about this is it fits well into our foundational structure, our wheel of self awareness. And I think that just to remind people, in the middle of that wheel, and we use this as kind of a guidepost to how we talk about things, is the self, the ego, self awareness, self accountability, self responsibility. And then circling around that, there's five levels, there's five topics. And if I don't remember one, Jim, you can help me out, but there's health, there's relationships, there's money, there's careers, and then what's the fifth one?
Worldview, how we view the
Worldview.
world.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, we were talking about anxiety. I brought it up because I was feeling a little anxious yesterday, and I spent this past weekend with my kids, who are all young adult, 26 to 35. And it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that this younger generation is way more anxious than we were when we were at that age. But I just feel like we were much more carefree. There seems to have been less to worry about, and it'd be interesting to get a few more people's opinions on that. But I think that what we want to talk about today is really, where's this anxiety coming from? I think would be a good kind of rabbit hole to go down. And then how might we combat this? What do you do about it so that it becomes more manageable, easier to hold on to? And there's so many sources of this stuff, Jim. I think that you and I have talked quite a bit lately about YouTube and media, and just turning those things on can almost immediately cause anxiety because of what's going on in the world. And so I think that's on both sides of the topic. I think that's one of the causes. And all you got to do to beat that one is turn it off. Just don't go there. How are you doing with your practice with regard to that?
Yeah, like you said, turn it off. It's a much easier said than done, right? But yeah, going back to our original framework about starting in the middle is ourself. You often use your hand as an example, and the hand, you have five fingers, have these five areas of your life, but you're pointing to the center of your hand because it does start with ourself, and there's many selves, but in this case, it's self-awareness, which you mentioned, and self-evaluation. So these, let's just say, Middle East events, I mentioned before, I think are wearing on a lot of people, and they're creating anxiety, and everybody is processing it different because, in my opinion, it's not just what's going on. It's that we have no control of what's going on, and nobody really has a clear outcome of what can happen. And we're divided because there's many different positions and perspectives on right and wrong. And this one is one, and the more you think about it, the more who is one to judge somebody else's opinion of right or wrong. This has been going on for hundreds of years, or at least in recent years. So yeah, I do think that anxiety is always with us. I think it's a normal thing, but it has affected. Recent events like this have affected us. And over the weekend, I was at a University of Oregon football game. So the Ducks, right? The big, and I'd been our daughter went to Penn State, our son went to ASU. So I've been to big time football games. But one thing about American football, especially college football, it is an experience. It's an American experience, and this one was great. I mean, the fans, the stadium, it's something else to see what a monument they have built up there. And a lot of that is the American capitalist system, right? That's Nike and the involvement of their alumni and so on and so on. So that was a great experience. But I had a couple of run-ins. And this is how you also, when you're getting older, right? A couple of run-ins. And I realized, these people, and I mean people, these students, they're a bit uptight, much more uptight than I remembered being at that age. So instead of criticizing them, I decided to go, to do kind of a self-evaluation. What did I do? And I'll share the story with you later about what provoked them to lash out at me over this. And these are just small run-ins, right? So I'll get more to the specifics about that. But yeah, there's no question that anxiety is and in social media, like you said, Mark, that we're exposed to news 24/7, and we almost become news addicts, or let's just say media addicts, of constantly filling our time with the sugary, artificial retail media, which is the news and other things. And yes, it's anxiety. It's with us more than we probably realize. So
I think to one of the points you made is, some of this stuff, most of this stuff, I would say, is beyond our control.
Yeah.
And what do you do about it? I was feeling pretty anxious yesterday, and it was about, I guess, the future. And I think all this stuff ties in. I mean, we're literally in a position where people are talking about World War III.
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly? How could you not have some anxiety with that becoming more of a possibility than we could ever imagined, even in the last 10 months? Or who would ever thought that we'd be at this point where the world's ready, like you said, to go into a place. And it's not the first time, by the way. This is what humans do. It's just, I think what is unique about this one, after World War II, there was all these initiatives to make sure that it would never happen again. And with all that said, and all we said, even with the U.S. saying we never get involved in proxy wars or these different things, and we did it again. We did exactly what we said we wouldn't do, right?
Well,
from Vietnam on. Yeah.
History repeats itself. Yeah, I mean,
it does. Yeah, history repeats itself. And I also don't want to make this a Republican or Democratic conversation. And here's why: because if you go back and look, they're one of the same. They've voted. It's the same people. It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. I want to kind of, if we can, fly above that one, just because I want to talk about, the position that we find ourselves in as a country, and then as humanity, right?
I reserve the right to just to try and do
that. I respect your right.
Well, I think, for me personally, because I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me personally, between COVID and the way we handled the rollout of the vaccines and the information about masks and hospitalizations, I mean, we were duped, in my opinion. And then you move over to the border, and it's like, well, there's people that we don't know anything about in the millions coming across that border. So one would logically conclude that some of those people are probably bad people, right? And we don't know who they are, we don't know where they are, and we don't know what's going on with their background. Then you go overseas to Ukraine and Russia, and that's a powder keg waiting to happen that I don't know anything about. All I know is we're throwing a shitload of money over there, and no one seems to be keeping track of who's getting what, where it's going. So that's not even political for me. That's just like, that's a business thing. You don't give a bunch of money to a business and say, you don't have to tell us what you're going to do with that. Just good luck, And so that's saying, and then Israel and Hamas. I mean, that's that's a 1,000-year-old thing, but it's now we got nukes, and it's like,
and mention China and Russia, because these are political decisions that we made as a country, again, regardless if it's Republican or Democrat, and they have an impact. And here we are today dealing with these.
And the reason I think everyone is responsible is because we collectively, as a country, put the people that are in power. You know, so everyone needs to take a self-aware look at that and say, how do we keep that from happening again?
I'm glad. No, I like the conversation, because they were trying to fly above all of the minor details that got us here, right? Because again, collectively, forget who it was, but this is where we're at. And it's here. I heard also, I want to share this kind of perspective with you. It's also, I don't think, if you go back in time, the U.S. benefited greatly from World War II, and we have reaped the benefits, our generation, our parents' generations, and our grandparents' generations for many, many years. There's also, like anything, things eventually they change over time. And when you win a war, a huge amount of sacrifices made, lives, horrible things happen, but also good things do come from that often.
If you learn, yeah.
If you learn, or look at the benefits, we economic benefits of trade and all these other things. So I don't want to go too much into the history books, but we were in a real good position for many years, and that's starting to change. And I'm hopeful that we'll get it right later, but we're in the middle of some major change. And yes, COVID, my trust, and it sounds like yours, for our government, COVID revealed a lot of stink that was going on politically.
Yeah. I was talking to my brother earlier this morning about some of this stuff, and we were talking about, just all the nonsense and all the noise. And one of the things that came up is spirituality, and I think that that's also part of our wheel there in terms of our worldview. But I know statistically, at least in the Catholic Church, the attendance numbers are way down. Young people aren't going to church anymore, and God is not being welcomed into the conversation in schools, not being welcomed into any conversations. It's almost like a secular existence is a preferable existence to God. And I don't care what you believe, but my opinion is the people that I know that can say to me, I have a deep faith, I believe in God, and nothing else, no churches, no denominations, nothing, just I have a deep belief in God, are happier than people that don't. And I think that if you can attach yourself to this higher power concept and say, look, I don't have control over any of this stuff. God's plan is God's plan. My expectation is to be a good person and to treat everybody nicely like I want to be treated, and to not be mean and disrespectful to other people, and he'll take care of the rest. But if you don't believe that, what do you latch onto? What happens when you get scared? What happens when you feel anxious? What if you don't have that? I don't know what the alternative to that is, and I think that's a mistake as a country, pushing that out of that family's getting pushed out, God's getting pushed out. That has to create anxiety. It has to.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's another, I think, an interesting perspective on it. Anxiety in many of the problems we have today is loneliness and lack of belonging. And like you said, let's just use a church, for example. It may not have been at all about what the message was. It would have been, it's probably more about having a community that you gatherings, consistent gatherings, belonging, and meaningful relationships that go beyond what we can have with the screen or solo by ourselves.
No question about it. No question about it.
I do think, like you said, a lot of the anxiety comes from isolation. Mm-hmm. And
my dad was telling me the other day that one of the benefits he gets from going to church, and he goes every day, is just what you said. I get to say hello to people. I get to have really cool conversations with people that I know I'm going to see the next day or the next week.
Yeah.
And everybody's coming to church. So the idea, it's uplifting. People are in good moods. They're optimistic. And just that little dose of that once a day for him makes a world of difference. And
and commonality, right? They have a common belief system. They have a common neighborhood. They have common things. And this kind of circles back to this self-reflection about a college football game versus a pro football game, a high school football game, the region, the part of the world it is. Like I said, 2 weeks or 3 weeks before, I was at a World Cup game where people there to represent their country, right? So I'm comparing them just because they have some commonalities. But college football is a really cool American thing, right? Because you have alumni, you have students, young people, and you have a real community that they all live in. That's the college town, especially a big school like Oregon University. So, but then you also have, let's get back to what I think what we talked about before we started recording this call was younger people, under 30 or 30 and under. Or let's just say, let's even tighten up even more. Let's say, I don't know, 18 to 30, somewhere, or 18 to mid 30s.
Mid 30s, yeah.
Mid 30s, right? They have some real anxiety that is justified. They don't have, when you look at housing, you look at student debt, you look at, particularly for our daughters, where they have a limited amount of time to have children. There's
that one there is fascinating to me as well, because again, my daughters were with me over the weekend, and one of them's 35, and what they're struggling with, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is what I took away from the conversation anyway, is that because of a few things. One is, what we're doing to men in this country is we're emasculating them, and we're putting toxic labels on them, and we're redefining what we expect out of men. And I think that because of our human nature, if you're a woman, you're looking for certain things in a man. And I don't care what you say, at least a few of those things involve strength and support and reliability and trust and fidelity. And these values and masculinity properly used, because masculinity, yes, it can be toxic, but real masculinity is not toxic at all. It's very supportive, and it's very helpful, and I think it's very necessary. So you've got this other layer of confusion, like, what do I want in a man? Well, I want all this emotional sensitivity, and I don't want any of this masculinity. But that's not what you really want. That's what you're being told by society is a valuable thing. And it's very confusing, and confusion causes anxiety.
Right. No, it's very well said. And it's also appropriate for the story I'm going to share with you about this very minor incident. But let's go with that. Let's run with that for a second, Mark. Who gets to determine what is right and normal and wrong? This is about their self-reflection, right? I don't want to take the high road and believe that like a lot of old people do, think it was better in the past, and if it would just come back the way it was when I was young, it'd all be better. That's kind of bullshit too, right? Who are we to project our past experiences on a new generation with completely different circumstances, and believe that's the only way and right way? So
you're right. I think that expecting the world to remain exactly where it was 50 years ago is foolish. It doesn't. We've made a lot of good progress in a lot of areas. I'm not denying that at all. I mean, just technology alone, which has created some challenges, particularly with things like AI. Talk about uncertainty and anxiety. But I think there are certain traditions that will always remain and should always be, like tearing down statues doesn't do anybody any good. I think storytelling, I think dinner at the table with the family, I think some sort of spiritual practice. I think that, I used to say all the time to my girls, the only thing that matters about who you are in a relationship with is you and the person you're in the relationship with. Everyone else's opinion is only relevant if you give it credibility. So that is always, so some of these things should probably always be reflected upon. Maybe we modify the way we talk about them, or the way we look at them, or the way we utilize them. But certain traditions, I think, need to be preserved. And I think
I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned too, these how we see the world and how we project that out to others, especially people younger than us, or our daughters, or in this case. So I'll kind of set this short story up, but we had spent the day, and this was at the dinner table. My wife cooked the traditional Italian dinner, so we were having dinner, and it was my son, of course, in his just turned 30, around 30, somewhere around there, and then my nephew, which was the one at University of Oregon. He's in his junior year, doing very well, great grades, business major. And then his daughter, which is a senior in high school, so she's getting ready to go off to school. And then my sister-in-law, which is Canadian, so yeah, so they're both half Canadian, half Americans, citizenship. It's kind of cool, right? So you got a different perspective. And then my brother and I and my wife, which obviously we all have, commonalities. But so I was saying, so yeah, we had a fun day and going to the game and everything. And I said, well, what's the takeaways from today? I said, setting the question up, I said, my takeaway today was nothing good happens when the word dude enters the conversation, because we had a couple of run-ins, right? So one of the run-ins was there was a huge group of people. I'm talking like, I don't know, 60,000 people. And we were going across this outdoor bridge, really beautiful. It's all green up there. And I just, I had a couple of beers. So just naturally stepped aside because a lot of people were trying to come in, and these two gals were directly behind me. And I said, ladies first, right? And stepped aside, holding my arm out, and kind of just let them go first, right? Well, one had pink hair and the other one had green hair, right? And I'm in Oregon. So I got a lesson. Boy, did I get a lesson, right? Not only did I get a scowl, I mean, I don't even know how you describe it. The eyes, the whole bit, like, how dare you call me a lady, right? And as soon as I said it, I realized maybe that wasn't appropriate. But at the same time, I meant nothing by it. I was maybe exaggerating, but I didn't really see them. I saw, some women behind me, and I just naturally, that's what I do, right? I just naturally held my arm out for the person behind them and pushed them I barely pushed them. I don't even think I touched them. I said, you go first. You're the ladies, right? And then they looked at each other, and then they laughed at me, of course, like, okay, dude, one of those. It's the first time in my life where I really felt like a douchebag, old guy. And hold on, I'm not even done on this, right? So, just again, I wasn't drunk, but I had enough beers to lower my filter a little bit. And like, you can just hear them talking, and they're angry, they're mad. It's not funny. They're not laughing. There's nothing funny about this to them at all. And then one of them tries to come up from behind me on the left and she's like put her shoulder into my back trying to get in front of me. And then I went, no, you can't have it both ways, right? Yeah. So I gave her first I gave her a left hip and then a left elbow. Not a hard one, but enough one to remind her that you can't have it both ways, right? You're not gonna sit there and make fun of me and then at the time. So anyway, I'm just using that as an example, but I started thinking, man, what happened? Why are they so angry? Right? Like, is that okay? Maybe I was out of line by calling them a lady. I didn't mean it. Anything, nothing bad, but it's kind of sad in a way. But it is a time to reflect, be conscious of your surroundings and so on. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out. I got another one after that. But
first of all, I mean, if you want my perspective on that, I think your instinct is to be polite. Your instinct is to be respectful. You are doing the exact opposite of what they presumed that you were doing, right? First of all, and what world do we live in where you have to be even worried about something like that? And it's funny because I was thinking as you were saying that, I spend a decent amount of time at coffee shops, and coffee shops seem to be predominantly staffed with liberal people. I don't say that besmirchingly. It's just an observation. There's a lot of pink hair, there's a lot of tattoos and facial, piercings, and you hear a lot of conversations without eavesdropping, just walking by, that clearly these people don't see the world the way I see the world. But I say to everyone, and every once in a while I think about it, and sometimes I don't think about it, but I'll say, if it's a guy, I'll say, thanks, dude, right? And if it's a girl, I'll say, thank you, honey, I appreciate that. I don't get.
But you said, dude, that's what I'm saying. I'll get to this. Not always.
My point is, when did we have to start thinking about the words dude or honey or pal or, I don't, I don't particularly like it when a younger person says dude to me. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful. But if it's not one of my kids, I'm not going to say anything about it. I don't give a shit, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, that's your
Yeah.
perspective on who I am. Good. I don't know you.
No,
I'll never see you again. I don't give a shit, you know?
this is hilarious. So yeah, so I got two more dude stories in the same day, right? You had your dude story, and so the other dude story was that's right. This was during the game. My niece and my nephew were talking in this area of the stadium, and then I walked up to say hi to them or something, and then they walked away. But apparently, I didn't realize this, but I was blocking somebody's view of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, so somebody lobs a peanut at me to get my attention for me to move, and I didn't take well to that, right? So I picked up the peanut and fired it back full swing. Probably, you know, I'm not much of a pitcher, but I probably got wasn't a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but it's probably a 50-mile-an-hour fastball. Peanut hit a guy square in the head, right? And then I realized, oh shit, that wasn't the guy that threw the peanut, right? The guy that the lady that threw the peanut was behind him yelling at me, move, move. And then I realized I just nailed this guy in the head for a peanut, and he had nothing to do with it. So now he goes, dude. And then I'm like, hey, dude, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to hit you with the peanut. It was just a pure reaction to the peanut, right? So that was my second dude story. But the whole dude thing, right? Hey, dude, move, dude. I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to hit you in the head with the peanut. So that was it. And then the final dude story was the game's completely over. We're walking back to the his fraternity, and there was a group of people walking towards us, and we were walking towards them, and I said something like, "Go Oregon," right? Like it's what you do, right? It was a game, they won, and it's like, "Go Oregon," and then of course, I don't think she had pink hair this time, but she says, "Oh yeah," her comment was, "Yeah, just the most sarcastic." Okay, dude. You know, so it's one of those old. You've arrived to being old when you have angry college age girls calling you dude or yelling at you dude. So those are my three dude
Yeah. Well,
stories.
I
But
mean, anger
nothing
is,
good happens when the word dude is used between middle-aged men and 20-year-old
yeah,
girls.
yeah. It's a generational gap, that's for sure.
Oh
I think
no,
well,
it's the douche. It's the I never consider myself as a douche. I don't think most would, but yeah, there just comes a point when they just dislike us. They just, but I also think they dislike everything, and it's sad that we have somehow uh, created this young person that is really angry, and maybe in some ways they're justified. I don't know, but that's my version
I
of
don't.
anxiety. They have a lot of anxiety, and I think they've been brainwashed to not love their country, almost to hate their country and everything about it. And maybe I represented that to them. I don't know.
That's a whole
I'm not
lot.
that heartbroken about it. It was just more of a self-reflection, a self-evaluation, a self-awareness of
Yeah, I
a
think
group of
the
people.
guy he hit in the head with the peanut was pretty calm.
No, he wasn't actually. I had to diffuse that conversation by apologizing to him. I didn't feel like wrestling him and getting kicked out of the football game. That's happened to me a couple other times before, so I have experience with this area.
Well, I mean, when you're teed up anxious, you're much more prone to being angry. I suppose. I suppose they're directly connected. Anger comes from anxiety because anxiety is born of fear.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's we're coming up on the break here, so I wanted to just throw out there a couple things because I think a lot of the things that I do now for my own health, emotional and physical, are helpful for me. I've said to you before, I don't know what I would do without exercise. I think it'd be a basket case. But the things that I do that people can reflect on, and maybe people already know this stuff, but I do some significant breath work. I find that just wonderful. And Wim Hof is
really
the guy
good.
that I follow. Yeah. I do a significant amount of meditation and prayer. I kind of consider them both the same thing. but that's because my spirituality allows me to combine the two of them. Again, giving yourself to a higher power that, please take care of this stuff. I have no control over this stuff. And then I have a pretty solid diet of good food, because when I don't eat well, I don't feel well, don't sleep well, none of that. And I don't think we pay attention to that piece enough. It's pretty simple. It's not easy to do, but it's pretty simple, conceptually speaking. And then I do a lot of visualization about what I want my future to look like. And these are all stop for a second, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a couple times a day, and just get out of your head. And I have found practicing that on a daily basis, it does two things for me. It lowers my anxiety, but maybe even more importantly, when my anxiety starts to rise, I have immediate access to tools that can pull me out of that within a matter of minutes instead of hours or days. And I just wanted to share that because it's not unique to me, but I think it's helpful.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And I'll kind of wrap up was back to, instead of growing old and angry, I think what you can, I decided to take the drive home, which was 8-hour drive home, and reflect, why is somebody that angry? Why is it mad? And in fairness to maybe that generation, right? There's a lot of unknowns, right? We've indebted them with student debt, and we've told them how bad their country is. There's a lot of anxiety in that for young women. So I tried to have empathy instead of just frustration and create more hate.
I agree. I think that's very self-aware of you to do that. I think it's what you just described is, I think, the key to all this stuff. And that is, okay, when something bad happens or something uncomfortable happens or something scary happens, how quickly can you step back and say, okay, how can I keep that from happening again? And what was my responsibility for that taking place? Instead of starting to look around, point your finger at other people or other circumstances that perhaps did cause part of it, but you don't have any control over that.
Right.
So I think that self-awareness is really probably the most important message we can even get across.
Yeah, and try to have humor with it, right? Humor as in, hey, what did I do wrong? And then share that with people in a positive way, in a learning way, not in an angry way. The world doesn't need more anger and more division and more hate. So that's why I was sharing about the dinner table, sharing that experience after it happened with them there. I think you can have an impact on people and lower this anxiety. So
yeah, we all need to lighten up a little bit. It feels like, Well,
no question.
Good stuff, Jim. Good stuff.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.